Anna Makama is deaf and communicates mostly through sign language. She got a university diploma and now works for the Disability Rights Commission in the Nigerian city of Jos.
Things are difficult, and it's not easy starting up a business. I'm glad I have a job. I feel really privileged because people with disabilities are hardly considered for employment. With my monthly pay, I support my family, and life keeps going.
Many people with disabilities in Nigeria are unemployed. Halima Ibrahim is one of them. She says disabled people are discriminated against, but she's hopeful of finding a job.
Many times, a lot of people with disabilities resort to begging because even when there are opportunities for employment, we are not considered. I feel the government reserving slots for us is good. It means there is hope for some of us too.
According to the World Health Organization, there are more than 35 million people with disabilities in Nigeria. Nearly two-thirds of disabled people in Nigeria are unemployed, according to the NGO Inclusive Friends, which is a non-profit promoting the rights of persons with a disability. Some advocates for equal rights in Nigeria say the government's plan to implement a 5% employment quota for persons with disabilities is a step in the right direction, but they want President Bola Tinubu to ensure the policy is implemented, as previous administrations had made similar commitments but failed to deliver on it. They argue that increasing the number of jobs will not be enough and want the government to embark on skill acquisition programs for people with disabilities to enable them become self-reliant.
The government cannot employ everybody. Therefore, we call upon the government so that there should be provision of support so that persons without disabilities can learn skills, persons with disabilities can learn things that they can do on their own, and they can stand and individually or collectively, they can start up businesses and other things that can make them become independent rather than just being dependent on the government.
President Tinubu's Office for Persons with Disabilities says it will ensure that applicants get access to employment opportunities. Ministers also say plans are underway to build upskilling centers across the country. A law passed in Nigeria in 2018 prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. But despite that, employment opportunities can be hard to find for people like Halima, who are hopeful that this new scheme will boost her chances of finding a job. Tassim Akende, CGTN Jos.
We're now joined by Kennedy Okongo, the Director of Program at the Riziki Source, an organization that acts as a bridge between people with disabilities and the labor market. Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. Talk to us. What have been some of the recent gains by African countries and governments pushing for inclusivity for persons with disabilities?
Thank you very much. The biggest gain, in my opinion, has been the adoption of the Rights of Persons with Disability Protocol by the African Union. This one places disability matters on top of the table, and now conversations around disability matters are being undertaken across every country in Africa. I'm talking from Kenya, particularly a country that has come a long way on matters of disability, and as was one of the pioneer countries to ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And with the organization I'm working with, we are working to ensure that persons with disabilities live independently by promoting chances for them getting employed. This is one of the avenues through which independent living could be achieved. And most importantly, the government of Kenya has come in handy in passing a legislation that introduces a quota system where 5% of persons with disabilities are supposed to get employment in various sectors with companies. It has not been achieved yet, but it is progressively being worked on. Yeah.
Well, further to what you've just said, talk to us about some of the most pressing challenges for people with special needs, especially in educational institutions and places of employment? What can be done?
The challenges are quite many. First of all, we are dealing with the stigma, the stereotyping as to the capacity of persons with disabilities. The stigma itself makes programming difficult for persons with disability because state actors, those in position, policymakers, will always not think about them on high regard because they will find it easy to prioritize other things and not prioritize disability matters. But I would say that where we are today is not where we were in the 80s. At least now we can have something to talk about. Even the forum we are currently using is one indicator of the miles we have traveled. It's an opportunity that now we are talking about persons with disabilities. The challenges will include the infrastructure, the assistive technology we need, the stigma associated with the minds of most people. When you talk about education, for example, you find an institution not able to accommodate all kinds of disability. There are cases where somebody has been called into an institution, failing to get in there because of the infrastructure set up in that kind of an institution. That remains a challenge. The cost of education remains a challenge. There's a relationship between disability and poverty. And the cost element, when you are talking about education matters, has an implication, and it remains a key challenge. When you talk about the skills that are required, you need skills to transition into employment. The moment the institutions are not able to accommodate you, it means you lag behind in getting the skills. And the net effect of that is that you not transition into employment. That remains a key challenge. We are also grappling with the slow economic growth in Africa, in various countries. Kenya particularly is no exception. There is definitely lack of employment for the youth. Now the situation becomes more acute when you are now addressing persons with disability. It is a problem for the general youth. It becomes a bigger problem now when you consider a person with disability, tied together with the stigma and the perception that they cannot perform in the workplaces. These are some of the challenges that remain key, that requires attention, especially on a day like this, where we are commemorating matters disability, a day signifying the resolve of persons with disabilities. Yes.